My name is Nora Reeves, and at 34 I found out that a chained-up front door can tell you more about your family than a lifetime of dinners ever will. I turned onto the grounds of the Wexford estate at 2:35 on a Saturday afternoon in June, wearing a dress I'd been putting money aside for over 9 months, cradling a bundle of white peonies my mom would have adored. The lot was empty. The main entrance was padlocked. Not one light burned inside. A groundskeeper was spraying down the stone steps like it was a nothing kind of weekend. I lowered my window. "Sorry," I called out, "there's a wedding here at 4. He hardly glanced up. "No, ma'am," he said, "that booking got pulled 3 days back." 180 guests were already in their cars heading my way. My phone was stacked with 38 messages, and not a single one came from my mother-in-law, whose name sat on that contract. What I pulled off in the next hour and a half ended up on the evening news. But first you should understand how a woman with no diploma and a $10 binder wound up alone in a locked parking lot on her own wedding day, and why she wasn't the least bit scared. Let me rewind a little. I was raised in a cramped 2-bedroom rental in Newburgh. My mother worked back-to-back shifts waiting tables at a diner just off Route 22. My father, Dale, drifted from one scheme to the next. One year it was flipping old records. The next it was a plan involving snack machines. None of it ever landed. The only thing he ever saw through to the end was a case of beer. I was the first person in our whole family to make it into a 4-year college. I lasted 3 semesters. That winter, my mother got diagnosed with stage 3 pancreatic cancer, and the medical bills showed up in the mailbox faster than any aid money ever could. So I dropped out, grabbed 2 part-time jobs, and spent the better part of a year sitting beside her in a room that reeked of disinfectant and burnt coffee. She passed away 9 days after my 21st birthday. I never set foot in a classroom again. Instead, I responded to a listing for an event setup assistant at a hospitality outfit over in Millbrook. $12.50 an hour. I got there early, left late, and figured out pretty quick that the mayhem of a live event was the one place my mind actually went still. Give it 3 years and I was running load-ins for corporate getaways. Give it 6 and I was handling vendor logistics for the entire region. By the time I hit 31, I was the director of event operations at Summit Crest Hospitality, the company that carried master service contracts with 9 high-end venues stretched between Beacon and Hudson. There was no framed degree on my office wall. What I had was a laminated run-of-show binder that went with me to every walkthrough, every vendor sit-down, every 3 a.m. crisis call. It was deep green, banged up at the corners, split into color-coded sections I'd built myself. My crew called it the playbook. My future mother-in-law had a different name for it. Here's the whole point. I put that career together the same way you put together anything that lasts. One shift at a time, with no cushion under me and nobody handing over the instructions. I met Ethan Caldwell during a venue walkthrough. He was the architect looking over a pergola job at one of the estates we partnered with. Tall, unhurried, the kind of guy who asks what you think and then actually pays attention to your answer. We were together 3 years before he asked me to marry him. Not once did he push me to explain the college thing. His family, though, that was a whole other conversation. The Caldwells had roots in the valley going back longer than the interstate. Old money, the hushed kind, the sort that quietly funds a new hospital wing and gets a little brass plaque instead of a headline. Marilyn Caldwell, Ethan's mother, sat on the board of the Brookdale Country Club and ran its yearly charity gala. Gerald, his father, golfed with judges. Chelsea, Ethan's younger sister, was 27 and had built an online following around perfect table settings and trust fund brunches. Our engagement dinner was at the club. I brought my binder along because I'd driven straight over from a site visit and didn't want to leave it baking in the car. There were contracts inside it worth more than the entire meal. Marilyn clocked it the instant I sat down. "Oh, is that your little schoolwork folder?" she said, loud enough for everyone at the table to catch it. I smiled and slid it under my seat. Later, over near the bar, I caught her talking to Gerald's sister. I wasn't meant to hear it, but sound travels in rooms with marble underfoot. She throws parties, Marilyn said. She doesn't actually belong at one. I just stood there with my club soda and let that line lodge itself between my ribs like a splinter I'd get to eventually. Then I went back to the table, laughed at Gerald's story about his boat, held Ethan's hand, and told myself that proving people wrong is a waste of good energy when you can simply outlast them. Turns out I was only half right. My father worshipped the Caldwells the way a man does when someone makes him feel like he almost fits in. After the engagement, Gerald set Dale up with a consulting gig, something loose about sourcing materials for a renovation at one of Gerald's rental buildings. It paid $350 a week and asked next to nothing of him. For the first time in 3 decades, my father wore a collared shirt to something that wasn't a funeral. He started saying we when he talked about the Caldwell family. He'd phone me on Sundays, not to check on me, but to relay whatever Marilyn had said over brunch. Marilyn thinks June's too soon for an outdoor ceremony. Marilyn says your caterer is too regional. I'd listen, then steer him somewhere else. The Sunday before our invitations went out, he called again. I told him I'd just been promoted, that my team was now handling logistics for a 3-day arts festival, the biggest contract Summit Crest had ever landed. 550 attendees, 15 vendors, a full build-out across 2 acres. He went quiet for a second. Then he said, "That's nice, honey. But you know what would really set you up for life? Finish that degree. Nobody respects a party planner forever." I didn't jump in. I'd spent 13 years learning that staying quiet costs less than fighting with someone who grades your whole life on the one thing you didn't complete. Then he reached for the line he'd been recycling since I was 20, the one he trotted out any time I mentioned a raise or a win. "You never finish anything, Nora. What makes today different?" I said goodbye, hung up, and drove out to a venue for a walkthrough, because the arts festival wasn't going to load itself in, and I had 58 pallets landing at sunrise. 3 months out from the wedding, Marilyn offered to book the Wexford estate. She called it her gift to us, her little way of helping make the day perfect. The Wexford was a 19th century mansion right on the river, all stone columns and a wraparound terrace looking out over the water. I knew the place cold. Summit Crest had run events there before, and I'd crossed those floors dozens of times with my binder tucked under my arm. But Marilyn wanted it booked through the family account. "It's just cleaner this way," she said with a smile. "I'll take care of the deposit, the contract, all of it. You just show up and be the bride." Ethan thought she was being generous. I thought she was being efficient. We'd already blown past budget on the photographer, and the Wexford's deposit ran $16,000. So I wrote Marilyn a check for $8,000, our half, and she promised to cover the rest. The contract landed in her name. The venue's main contact got switched to her email, and when I asked to be copied on anything they sent, she gave a soft little laugh. "Sweetheart," she said, "you plan events for a living. Take a weekend off." I told myself it was only paperwork, that a contract is a contract no matter whose name sits on line 1. That handing your future mother-in-law a booking isn't the same as handing her a loaded gun. I was wrong on all 3 counts. I just didn't know it yet. Here's what I did know. The Wexford had a 72-hour cancellation window, a non-refundable deposit clause, and a standard force majeure provision under New York event law. I knew those things because I'd read hundreds of venue contracts across my career. I just never once pictured myself reading the one with my own wedding date printed on it. Ethan and I were good together. Not flashy, not for show. We made pasta on weeknights, hiked the ridge trails on the weekends I wasn't on site, and bickered over whose turn it was to deal with the plumber. He made me laugh once in the middle of a load-in, texting me a picture of our cat wedged inside a shipping crate with the caption, "New vendor, extremely furry, awful references." I saved it. That's the kind of thing you hold on to when the rest of your days run on spreadsheets and freight timetables. 2 weeks before the wedding, Marilyn put together a groomsmen's golf trip at a resort up in the Catskills. "Just the guys," she said. "Ethan works so hard, he deserves to unwind." I didn't push back. He'd been pulling long hours wrapping up a commercial build, and he looked worn down. He drove off on a Thursday. I kissed him at the door and told him to eat something other than bar snacks. That same Thursday, I emailed the Wexford to lock down the table layout and the ceremony to cocktail transition. Nothing came back. I emailed again Friday morning. Silence. I called the coordinator's direct line and got voicemail. I tried the front office. Someone I didn't recognize picked up. "Oh, all communication for the Caldwell-Reeves event is going through Mrs. Caldwell now," she said. "She asked us to route everything straight to her." My chest went tight. I texted Marilyn right away. "Hey, just double-checking the Wexford layout is locked in. Can you confirm?" 40 minutes later, she wrote back. "All set, sweetheart. Table layout, ceremony arch, cocktail transition, everything's handled. Stop fretting and enjoy being a bride for once." I screenshotted it and dropped it into my planning folder. It was detailed enough to quiet my nerves. And that, I'd realize later, was the whole idea. She fed me the exact answer a logistics person needs to hear so I'd stop asking. It worked. I had a dozen vendor arrivals to line up that weekend for the festival, a seating chart I still hadn't finished, 100 loose ends. Re-verifying a venue whose contract holder had just texted me a point-by-point confirmation wasn't going to make the list. So I let it go. I went back to my binder. I went back to work. They'd added me to the Caldwell family group text 3 months earlier, right after the engagement party. Marilyn framed it as logistics, one shared thread where we could line up schedules, trade updates, keep all the wedding planning in one spot. In reality, it was Chelsea's personal broadcast channel. Chelsea had the energy of someone who'd never once heard the word no from a person holding a checkbook. She posted nonstop, links to floral setups she'd spotted at a friend's wedding, passive-aggressive polls about bridesmaid dress shades, and running commentary on the guest list that always looped back to the same question, whether I was in over my head. One afternoon, she dropped in a screenshot of our caterer's website with a single line underneath. "Is this where the rehearsal dinner's coming from? Looks like a diner counter." Marilyn hearted it. Gerald sent a thumbs up. I stared at the screen for about 10 seconds, then flipped my phone face down on my desk. My assistant, Marcus, glanced over. "Family stuff," I said. "Wedding stuff, same thing, unfortunately." Years of managing event crews had taught me one thing about group chats. They show you who people really are when they think they're just being casual. Marilyn rarely posted, but she liked nearly everything Chelsea wrote. Gerald only chimed in when money came up. And Ethan, sweet, conflict-dodging Ethan, would answer maybe every third message with a neutral little emoji, the digital version of changing the subject. Nobody in that thread ever asked about my work. Nobody asked about the festival, 17 days out and the most complicated job of my life. To them, I was a line item, the bride who threw parties but didn't quite belong at one. The thread buzzed in my pocket all week. I stopped checking it after dinner. 3 days before the wedding, 2 things caught my attention. First, the Wexford still hadn't sent over the day of timeline, that standard packet every venue mails out the week before with vendor load-in windows, parking assignments, and emergency contacts. Normally, I'd have chased it down myself, but Marilyn had funneled all contact through her, and her text 2 weeks back had been specific enough that I'd filed it under handled. Second, Marilyn had gone strangely quiet since that message. No follow-ups about centerpieces, no last-second seating complaints, no helpful little suggestions delivered like she was doing me a favor by naming my failures, just nothing. I mentioned it to Ethan on the phone that night. He was still at the resort, loose and happy. "Mom's probably just swamped with club stuff," he said. "You know how she gets before a big weekend." "She hasn't said a word since that venue confirmation," I told him. "Ethan, that sounds like a blessing." He laughed. I laughed too, because he wasn't wrong, and because sometimes love means letting someone else's calm carry your worry for a couple of minutes. I hung up and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open to an empty inbox. I pulled up the Wexford's website, the inquiry page, the gallery, the contact form. All of it looked perfectly normal. Then I checked the family group text. Nothing since Tuesday. 4 people, none of them talking. In my line of work, silence 3 days out from an event is never a good sign. It means somebody decided something and left you out of the loop. It means a vendor moved a spec, or a permit fell through, or a deposit bounced. Silence means you're about to walk into a room that doesn't look the way you left it. But I was the bride now, not the coordinator. And I told myself, for the very last time, that some rooms you're allowed to trust without standing inside them first. I shut the laptop. I went to bed. I should not have gone to bed. Saturday, I woke up at 6. The house was still. The coffee maker kicked on at 6:15, because I'm the kind of person who programs the coffee maker the night before her own wedding. I showered, did my hair in a low twist I'd rehearsed 4 times, and slipped into the dress, ivory crepe, fitted at the waist, nothing fussy. I'd picked it because it looked like something a woman wears when she means business and happens to also be getting married. My maid of honor, Simone, showed up at 7:30 with champagne and a garment bag holding her own dress. She told me I looked beautiful. I believed her, partly because Simone doesn't lie, and partly because I'd been up since 4 and had already cried once staring at a photo of my mom on the fridge. At 8:45, the florist's assistant dropped off my bouquet. White peonies, fat and layered, soft as tissue paper. My mother used to grow peonies in our backyard in Newburgh, back when we had a backyard. She'd cut them in June and line them up in mason jars along the kitchen windowsill. They'd last maybe 4 days before they browned and shed petals everywhere, and she never minded. Beauty that stays forever isn't real beauty, she'd say. That's plastic. I pressed the bouquet to my chest and felt the cool stems through the wrap. Simone snapped a picture. "You ready?" she asked. "I've been ready since I mailed the deposit check," I said. She had no idea how true that was. By 10, I'd packed the car, checked my phone 14 times, and confirmed the 11 o'clock pickup for my father. The ceremony was at 4. I had 5.5 hours. Felt like plenty. It wasn't. I keep one rule at work. Never assume a room is ready until you've stood in it yourself. That rule has saved me more times than I can count. The gala where the stage wasn't bolted down. The corporate retreat where the AV was set up in the wrong ballroom. The outdoor ceremony where nobody checked the drainage and the aisle turned into a mud pit by noon. You walk the room. You confirm with your own eyes, then you trust the plan. On my wedding day, I nearly broke that rule. Marilyn had told me not to come early. "The coordinator has it under control," she'd said. "Just get there at 3:30 and enjoy the moment." But my body knows the rhythm of an event. By noon, I was restless. By 1, I was rearranging the trunk. By 2, I told Simone I had to go look at the space just to calm my nerves. I drove south on Route 22 with the windows cracked. The peonies rode in the passenger seat, wrapped in damp paper towels. Simone followed in her own car. The June air smelled like cut grass and river water. I'd driven this road 100 times for work, knew every bend, every farm stand, every stone wall. At 2:30, I turned up the private drive to the Wexford estate. Gravel crunched under the tires. The oaks along the lane were full and green. Everything looked exactly right until I crested the hill and the building came into view. No tent on the terrace. No valet signs. No catering van, just stone, glass, and dead quiet. The front doors weren't just shut. They were chained, wrapped with a padlock I'd never laid eyes on, a laminated sign taped to the glass. "Private event cancelled," it read. "Contact office for details." I yanked the handle twice. The chain rattled but held. Through the glass I could see the grand foyer, the exact spot where 3 months earlier I'd stood with Marilyn and the coordinator picking the location for the ceremony arch. The arch was gone. The room sat dark and empty. I called the main office line. It rang 6 times. A man picked up, not the coordinator I knew, but a facilities manager working a weekend shift. "Wexford Estate, how can I help you?" "This is Nora Reeves," I said. "I've got a wedding here at 4. The doors are chained shut. A pause, keys clicking. "Ma'am, the Caldwell Reeves event was cancelled 3 days ago." I held the phone to my ear and felt the peony stems press into my palm, the wrap crinkling in my grip. "Cancelled by who?" I asked. "The contract holder," he said. "A Mrs. Marilyn Caldwell. She called Tuesday afternoon. The refund cleared to the card on file by Wednesday morning. The parking lot was silent. Simone was coming across the gravel toward me, her expression sliding from confusion into alarm. 180 people had RSVP'd. The caterer was loading a van somewhere in Hudson right that minute. The florist was arranging centerpieces in a workshop a few miles out. The string quartet had confirmed that morning. My future husband was driving down from the mountains, freshly shaved, probably singing along to the radio. And the building where all of them expected to gather tonight was locked, black, and empty, because the woman who signed the contract had unsigned it without breathing a word to any of us. Here's what happens when you've spent 13 years fixing problems inside burning timelines. Your body moves before your brain catches up. I didn't cry. I didn't sit down. I walked back to my car, set the peonies on the hood, and pulled up the Wexford's business office number, the direct one I had from my own work account, not the general line. A woman named Paula answered on the second ring. "Paula, this is Nora Reeves," I said. "I'm also Director of Operations at Summit Crest Hospitality. I need you to tell me exactly what got canceled, when, and the current refund status." She paused. She knew Summit Crest. We'd run 4 events at the Wexford in the past 2 years. "Nora, I'm so sorry," she said. "Mrs. Caldwell called Tuesday at 1:15, said the event was off and asked for a full cancellation. Per policy, we kept the non-refundable portion, $3,000, and the remaining $13,000 went back to the visa on file." "Whose visa?" "Mrs. Caldwell's. $13,000. 8 of it was mine. The check I'd written in March, handed over in Marilyn's kitchen while she poured me tea. The rest was hers. She'd canceled 3 days out, pocketed the refund, and left me standing in a parking lot in a wedding dress with 180 guests less than 90 minutes from arriving. I thanked Paula and asked her to email me the cancellation record, the timestamp, the last 4 digits, the whole trail. She said she'd have it to me in 5 minutes. Simone was next to me now. "Nora, what's going on?" "Marilyn canceled the venue," I said. "What? 3 days ago." "She took the refund." Simone's face drained of color. I looked at the chain doors one more time. Then I walked to the trunk and pulled out my binder. My father showed up 12 minutes later. He'd caught a ride with Gerald, of course he had, and he climbed out of a silver sedan in a suit I'd never seen before. Charcoal, tailored, a pocket square. I could feel Gerald's money in the fabric from 20 feet away. Dale came up the drive looking baffled. "Why's the lot empty?" he asked. "Where's the setup crew?" "Marilyn canceled the venue," I told him. He blinked. He looked at the chain doors, then back at me. I waited for the reaction I needed. Outrage, disbelief. The protective fury of a father watching his daughter get ambushed on her wedding day. Instead, he pulled out his phone. "Let me call Marilyn," he said. "I'm sure it's just a mix-up. She probably moved it to the club, they've got that terrace." "She didn't move it, Dad. She canceled the contract and took the refund. $13,000. 8 of it was ours." He put the phone back in his pocket. He stared at the gravel. Then he said the thing that told me everything I needed to know about where his loyalty had been parked these last few months. "Nora, listen," he said. "You're getting yourself worked up. Marilyn's been doing this a lot longer than either of us. Let her handle it. Be grateful somebody in this family knows how to manage these things. Be grateful. Manage these things. Like I was a problem to be managed. Like event logistics wasn't the exact thing I did every single day for a paycheck." He straightened his pocket square and added, quiet, as if he were doing me the favor, "You never finish anything, Nora. What makes today any different?" I looked at my father in his borrowed suit and his borrowed confidence. I didn't answer him. I didn't need to, not yet. I sat in the driver's seat with the door open and my heels on the gravel. Simone was fielding calls from 2 bridesmaids who just left the city. Dale stood by the fountain, scrolling his phone with the posture of a man convinced the problem had already been handed off to someone more capable. I opened the Caldwell family group text. I hadn't looked at it since Wednesday. The thread had been quiet, or so I'd assumed. I scrolled up past the silence, past the debate over cocktail hour music, and found exactly what I was after. Tuesday, 2:47 p.m. Marilyn. "It's done. I took care of the problem. The Wexford is off the books. Tuesday, 2:49 p.m. Chelsea. Wait, seriously? OMG, what's she going to do when she shows up? Tuesday, 2:51 p.m. Marilyn. Exactly what I told your father she'd do. Fall to pieces. She plans parties, Chelsea. She doesn't belong at one. Tuesday, 2:53 p.m. Chelsea. I can't wait to see her face. Should I film it? Tuesday, 2:55 p.m. Marilyn. Don't be crude, just be there. Tuesday, 3:12 p.m. Gerald. Confirmed. Brookdale has the small terrace open Saturday evening. Family only, 30 people. This is how it should have been from the beginning. I read the whole thread twice. My hands stayed steady. My breathing didn't shift. 14 years of managing vendor blow-ups and weather cancellations and freight delays had taught me how to take in bad information without letting it take me apart. This wasn't a mix-up. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was a plan. Marilyn had killed the venue, grabbed the refund, and lined up a replacement ceremony at her club, a small family-only affair where she controlled the guest list, the setting, and the story. She'd handed me a locked door so I'd have no choice but to walk through hers. I closed the group text. I set the phone on the dash and looked at the passenger seat, where my binder sat between the peony bouquet and a tote bag full of emergency supplies. Safety pins, double-sided tape, a portable steamer, a power strip, 4 granola bars, and the binder. Deep green, scuffed, tabbed. Inside it was every contact I'd built over 13 years. Caterers who owed me favors. Florists who trusted my timelines. A DJ who answered my calls before he answered his own wife's. Venue managers who'd worked with me on 30-plus events and knew that when Nora Reeves called with a problem, the problem was already half solved by the time she dialed. Marilyn Caldwell thought I was a girl who threw parties. She figured I'd stand in this lot and cry until somebody rescued me. She'd built her entire play around the belief that a woman without a degree would crumble the second the building vanished. She thought the building was the wedding. She was wrong. I opened the binder to the vendor directory. 39 contacts, sorted by category, updated every quarter. I ran my finger down the column marked venues, MSA active, and stopped on the third name. Cedar Hollow Barn at Miller's Ridge, 15 minutes south. Stone walls, vaulted timber ceiling, ferry lights up year-round, capacity 220. We held a master service agreement with them through Summit Crest. I had Denise Harmon's personal cell, and I had somewhere around 80 minutes before the first guests started rolling up to a venue that no longer existed. I picked up my phone. I called Marcus Bell, my second-in-command. He answered on the first ring. Marcus, I need a full redirect. 180 guests, 90-minute window. I'll explain later. He didn't miss a beat. Where am I sending them? You're right, Marilyn. I plan parties. Watch me. Denise Harmon picked up on the second ring. Nora, it's Saturday, she said. Please tell me this isn't a load-in emergency. It's my wedding, I said. Silence. Then talk to me. I gave her the short version. Venue canceled. Contract holder sabotaged it. 180 guests arriving in about 80 minutes at a building with a padlock on the door. I needed Cedar Hollow, and I needed it now. Denise exhaled. The barn's open, she said. We had a Sunday brunch cancel last week, so the space is clear. But Nora, we're not set up for a ceremony. No chairs out, no sound system. That's fine, I'll handle setup, I told her. I just need the space, the kitchen cleared for a caterer, and the lot open in 40 minutes. You're serious? I wrote the master service agreement you signed last October, I said. Page 6, Section 3. Summit Crest affiliated events get priority booking, 24-hour notice waived in emergencies. I'm invoking it. Another pause. You put that clause in on purpose, didn't you? I put it in because buildings fall through, Denise. I just never imagined mine would be one of them. She told me the doors would be open in 30 minutes. Marcus was already in motion. He called the caterer, a crew out of Hudson I'd worked with on a dozen jobs, and rerouted their van to Miller's Ridge. He called the florist and told them to hold the centerpieces in the vehicle, new address coming. He grabbed 2 set-up techs off a Summit Crest warehouse crew on standby and sent them out with folding chairs, a portable sound system, and half a dozen extension cords. This is what 13 years of logistics looks like when it stops being theoretical. It's phone calls, not panic. It's relationships, not luck. It's a woman in a wedding dress making calls off the hood of a car with a binder open on the paint. The guest redirect was the hardest piece. 180 people were scattered across the valley, in cars, in hotels, in brunch spots, in parking lots, fixing bow ties and checking their GPS. I didn't have a mass notification system. I had a phone tree and a bridal party. Simone took the first 50 names. I split the rest among the bridesmaids, each with a script I dictated in 60 seconds. Change of venue. Cedar Hollow Barn at Miller's Ridge, 318 Miller's Ridge Road. Follow the signs off Route 55. Everything's on schedule. See you at 4. Clean, calm, no explanation, no drama. I'd learned in my first year of event work that frantic instructions breed frantic guests. You give them an address, a time, and confidence. They fill in the rest. Marcus texted me a photo of the Cedar Hollow lot, his car, Denise's truck, and 2 Summit Crest vans already unloading. Chairs going in now, he wrote. Sound check in 20. I typed back, ceremony arch. I pulled the backup from the warehouse, he answered. White birch. It'll work. I made one more call. Rachel Owens, an old friend of Simone's, a lifestyle reporter for the local station and guest number 130 on our list. She'd already caught wind of it from Simone. Nora, are you okay? What happened? I'll tell you everything later, I said. Right now I need you to post the new address in every group chat you're in. Can you do that? Already done, she said. And Nora, I'm bringing my camera crew. We were supposed to shoot a farmer's market segment today, but this is better. Rachel. This is a story, Nora, she said. A good one. Let me tell it, I didn't argue. I had a little over an hour left and a barn to dress. People think logistics is spreadsheets. It isn't. It's deciding what you can save and what you let go of. I let go of the building. I let go of the stone columns and the river view and the terrace where I'd pictured standing with Ethan while the sun slid behind the hills. What I did not let go of was the wedding. I drove to Miller's Ridge at 2:55. The barn was coming alive. Marcus had the chairs lined up in rows, plain white folding ones instead of the upholstered rentals, but they were straight and clean and enough. Denise had strung extra fairy lights along the stone. The caterer's van was backed up to the kitchen entrance, and I could see the team hauling in chafing dishes through the propped door. The florist rolled in at 3:10 with the centerpieces intact in the van, hydrangeas, eucalyptus, candles in glass cylinders. She took one look at me standing in the barn doorway in my wedding dress and burst into tears. Don't start, I told her. We've got 48 minutes. She laughed and got to work. I walked the space with my binder. Stone walls, timber ceiling, warm light. It wasn't the Wexford estate. It wasn't grand or old money or the kind of place that comes with a plaque. But it was real, and it was ready, and it was mine. Booked on my say-so, set up by my crew, filled with vendors who trusted me enough to pivot on a Saturday afternoon. By 3:35, the arch stood in place. By 3:45, the first cars started rolling into the lot. The Caldwell family thread blew up at 3:10. I know because Marcus was keeping an eye on it. I'd handed him my phone so I could stay focused on the barn, and he showed me the screenshots afterward. Chelsea, 3:10. Hold on, people are saying the wedding's at some barn now. What's going on? Marilyn, 3:12. That's not possible. The Wexford is closed. There is no wedding. Gerald, 3:14. Just got a call from Tom Barlow. He's driving to Miller's Ridge. Somebody blasted out a new address. Marilyn, 3:16. She can't do that. She has no authority to book anything. Chelsea, 3:17. Mom, people are actually going, like a lot of them. Marilyn, 3:19. Everyone comes to Brookdale. Gerald, start calling guests. Tell them the real ceremony is at the club. Gerald, 3:21. I phoned 6 people. Every one of them is headed to the barn. One said there's a news crew out there. Marilyn, 3:23. A news crew. Chelsea, 3:24. Mom, what do we do? Marilyn, 3:28. We go and we fix this. Marcus gave me the phone back at 3:40. I read the thread once, dropped it in my pocket, and nudged a chair straight in the third row. There was nothing in those messages that surprised me. Marilyn had prepared for a woman who would fall apart. She'd lined up a backup at the club, a tidy, controlled, family-only affair where the story of the ruined wedding would be whatever she decided to tell people. She hadn't prepared for a woman who'd grab a phone and move 180 guests in under an hour. She hadn't prepared for the playbook, and she sure hadn't prepared for a camera crew. Guests kept rolling in after 3:45. They parked along the shoulder of Miller's Ridge Road and walked the gravel path up to the barn, and every one of them wore the same expression, a flicker of confusion that flipped straight into delight. The lights were glowing. The flowers were placed. The string quartet, bless every one of them, had followed the redirect text and set up on a stone patio just outside the main doors. They were playing something soft and warm when the first guest stepped through. Denise met people at the entrance with printed cards. I'd asked Marcus to run off at a copy shop on his way in, plain cream stock with the revised schedule and a little map of the grounds. She'd thrown a blazer over a flannel shirt and looked completely in command. At 3:55, two of the caterers' leads found me with a question about buffet flow. Director Reeves, do you want the carving station inside or out on the patio? A woman standing close by, one of Ethan's aunts, someone I'd met exactly once, turned and looked at me. Director, she said. I smiled. It's my day job. You put all this together since this afternoon? Since 2:30, she stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head. Honey, they told me you were a party planner. I am, I said. This is what that looks like. By 4 o'clock the barn was packed. 180 people seated, hushed, waiting. The arch stood at the front, white birch, simple, wound with a single strand of greenery the florist had threaded through in about 12 minutes. Candles flickered in glass cylinders on every ledge. The old stone held the heat and the light. It wasn't the Wexford. It was better, because not one person in that room was there because Marilyn Caldwell had decided they should be. They were there because I asked them to come, and they came. Ethan called me at 3:50. He was still 15 minutes out, driving fast, and I could hear the shake in his voice before he got a word out. Nora, Simone just called me. Tell me it isn't true. Which part? My mother canceled the venue. 3 days ago, she took the refund. Gerald booked a terrace at the club for 30 people, family only. Silence. I could hear the road humming under his tires. Then very quiet, where are you right now? Cedar Hollow Barn, Miller's Ridge, 318 Miller's Ridge Road. Are people there? 180 of them, seated, waiting for you. Another silence longer, I could hear him breathing. How he finally said, how did you pull this off? It's my job, Ethan. This isn't your job, this is your wedding, today it's both. He went quiet for a few seconds. When he spoke again, his voice was level but ragged. I didn't know, I swear I had no idea. She sent me away on purpose. The golf weekend. She set it up so I wouldn't be around. I know, I'm going to deal with this, Nora. My parents, Chelsea, all of it. You can deal with it after we're married. Right now I need you to drive the speed limit and get here in one piece. He almost laughed. Wherever you are, that's where the wedding is. It always was. He hung up. I stood in the barn doorway holding my phone, watching the light shift through the trees on the ridge above us. The peonies sat on a table near the arch, a little tired now, the outer petals curling and soft. Still beautiful, still mine. My mother had it right. Beauty that lasts forever isn't real. It's plastic. Marilyn, Gerald, and Chelsea reached the Wexford at 3:55. I know that because the groundskeeper filled me in later, the same man who'd been hosing down the steps when I first pulled up. He said a silver sedan came flying up the drive and a woman in a navy dress climbed out before it had fully stopped. She marched up to the front doors, saw the chain, read the laminated notice, and stood there frozen for a full minute. Then she turned around and spotted the sign. Marcus had made it, a simple placard on a metal stake driven into the grass beside the main drive. Caldwell Reeves Wedding, new venue, Cedar Hollow Barn at Miller's Ridge, 318 Miller's Ridge Road, follow Route 55 South, all guests welcome. Underneath the directions, in smaller print, with love from the party planner. The groundskeeper said Marilyn read it twice, then yanked it out of the ground and hurled it into the bushes. Gerald picked it up, brushed it off, and stuck it back in the dirt. Chelsea was already in the car, thumbs flying over her phone. They drove to Miller's Ridge. It took them 12 minutes. When they turned into the lot at 4:10, the ceremony had already started. The barn doors were open. The quartet was playing. 180 guests sat facing the arch where Ethan waited. Marilyn got out of the car and heard the music. She could see the crowd through the open doors, the candles, the flowers, the strings of light. Everything she'd worked to erase was alive and shining 12 minutes down the road. Gerald straightened his tie. Chelsea tucked her phone into her purse. And Marilyn walked toward the barn wearing the face of a woman who just understood that the locked door she'd built had only shut her out. They slid into the back row. I caught them out of the corner of my eye. Marilyn in navy, Gerald in gray, Chelsea in the pale pink dress she'd posted 3 fitting room photos of. Dale was already seated on the groom's side, midway back, arms folded, watching me with a look I couldn't read from that distance. The officiant was a retired judge named Beatrice Lowell, a woman I'd met through a Summit Crest fundraiser. She was mid-sentence when the Caldwells sat down, and she didn't miss a step. She didn't need to. The room was calm. The guests were calm. I was standing at the front of a stone barn in an ivory dress holding a bouquet of peonies that were now 3 hours past their peak, and I was calm too. Ethan stood beside me. He'd arrived at 4:02, changed into his suit in Denise's office in under 4 minutes, and walked to the arch without looking at anyone but me. He took my hand. His palm was damp. Mine wasn't. Beatrice asked if we were ready to go on. Ethan said yes. I said yes. And I meant it, not just the marriage, but the whole thing. The 90 minutes, the phone tree, the rerouted caterer, the backup arch, the 12-minute drive, the binder open on the hood of my car. I meant every call I'd made since 2:30. But we weren't finished. Not yet. Beatrice had agreed to a short pause in the ceremony between the readings and the vows so I could speak to the room. She didn't ask why. I told her I wanted to thank the people who'd made the day happen. That was true. I just also needed to thank them for showing up to a wedding somebody had worked very hard to make sure never took place. Marilyn moved first. During that pause, while Beatrice stepped aside, Marilyn rose from the back row and walked into the center aisle. She was smiling, that gracious, warm hostess smile I'd watched her practice at every club function. "If I may," she said, loud enough to carry. "I just want to say how wonderful it is that we're all here tonight." There was a little hiccup with the original venue, one of those last-minute things that pop up in event planning, as I'm sure Nora knows better than anybody. She laughed lightly. A few guests shifted in their seats, but the Caldwell family pulled together the way we always do. And look at this lovely space. We couldn't be happier. She pressed a hand to her chest, the rehearsed modesty of a woman who chairs galas. "Ethan, sweetheart, your father and I are so proud. And Nora, welcome to the family." She turned to sit back down, and for a moment the room nearly bought it. The hiccup, the family rallying, the gracious mother-in-law narrating the chaos into something charming and small. I watched 180 faces soften. The polite reset of people who don't want to fight at a wedding. They wanted to believe her. It was easier, cleaner, the sort of thing that makes a nice toast at the reception. But I'd spent 13 years reading rooms. I knew what it looked like when a crowd settled for a comfortable lie because nobody had handed them the truth yet. I looked at Ethan. He looked at me. His jaw was tight, but he gave me a single nod, so slight almost no one would have caught it. I stepped forward, still holding the peonies. They were heavy now. The stems were warm from my hand, and for the first time all day, I wasn't solving a problem. I was closing one out. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The barn had good acoustics. Stone walls do that for you. "Thank you, Marilyn. I appreciate the kind words." I paused, let the room settle. "I want to thank every single person in this barn tonight. You got a text 3 hours ago telling you the address had changed, and you came anyway. That means everything to me." I held the bouquet against my waist. The peonies were soft, browning at the edges, still hanging on. "But I owe you the truth about why you're standing in this barn instead of the Wexford estate." It wasn't a hiccup. The venue wasn't double-booked. There was no last-minute mix-up. I looked at Marilyn. She was still in the aisle. The smile hadn't dropped yet, but her eyes had shifted. 3 days ago, the contract holder on our wedding venue, my mother-in-law, Marilyn Caldwell, called the Wexford estate and canceled our booking. She got a $13,000 refund sent to her personal credit card. $8,000 of that was money Ethan and I paid back in March. The room went quiet. Not the polite quiet of a ceremony, the loaded quiet of people doing the math. She didn't tell me. She didn't tell Ethan. She didn't tell any of you. She set up a replacement ceremony at the Brookdale Country Club. 30 guests, family only, a version of today she could control. I pulled the cancellation confirmation from my binder. The printout Paula had emailed me at 2:42. I held it up for a second, then laid it on the table beside the arch. This is the cancellation record. Timestamp, card number, authorization code. It's right here if anyone would like to look. I turned back to the room. I'm not telling you this to embarrass anybody. I'm telling you because you drove here on faith, and faith deserves facts. The peonies shook a little in my hand. I set the bouquet down next to the printout and folded my hands. Now, if it's all right with everyone, I'd like to marry the man I came here to marry. Marilyn's face moved through 3 stages in about 4 seconds. First, the frozen smile, held up by muscle memory and 30 years of public poise. Second, the crack. A tremor at the corner of her mouth, a blink that lasted a beat too long, the small collapse of someone who's just been outmaneuvered in front of witnesses. Third, the pivot. She stepped forward. Her voice went thick with a controlled wobble, the practiced quiver of a woman who's cried at fundraisers and board meetings when tears served her better than arguments. Nora, sweetheart, I don't know what you've been told, but there's been a terrible misunderstanding. The venue had problems, structural problems. I was trying to protect you. I was trying to protect this family. The venue was open 3 days ago, Marilyn. It's open now. I called them. Gerald, tell them about the structural report. Gerald shifted in his seat. He looked down at his shoes. He did not produce a structural report. Marilyn's wobble hardened. The tears dried up. And there it was, the real face under the performance. Her voice dropped low and flat. You ungrateful little. Do you have any idea what this family has done for you? What we've given you, you had nothing. Nothing. You threw parties for a living, and we opened doors you never could have opened yourself. She plans parties, said a voice from the 3rd row. Ethan's aunt, the same woman who'd asked me about my job title 15 minutes earlier. She plans parties, Marilyn, and she just moved your entire guest list to a brand new venue in 90 minutes while you were driving to a country club to host 30 people. The room let out a breath. It wasn't applause, it was something better. The collective recognition of a lie getting swapped out for a fact. Marilyn stood there in the aisle, mouth slightly open. I looked at her from the front of the barn, hands still folded, voice still level. You're right, Marilyn. I plan parties. Watch me. I turned to my father. He was in the 5th row, groom's side, and his borrowed suit suddenly looked a size too big. His arms weren't crossed anymore. They were in his lap, fingers laced, knuckles white. I didn't walk over to him. I didn't need to close the gap. The barn was small enough that when I spoke, he could hear me like I was sitting right beside him. Dad, he looked up. This morning you told me to let Marilyn handle things. You told me to be grateful. You've told me a version of that my whole life. That I didn't finish school. That nobody takes a party planner seriously. That I'd never finish anything. The room was silent. 180 people and a camera crew, and the only sound was the faint hum of the lights along the wall. I left college at 20 because Mom was dying and somebody had to be there. That somebody was me. Not you. His jaw tightened. I saw it, the flinch that comes right before either an apology or a dodge. I built a career without a degree. I run operations for a company that manages 9 venues in this valley. The vendors in this room follow my timelines. The venue we're standing in has a contract with my name on page 1. I held his gaze. You said I never finish anything. I finished today in 90 minutes in a wedding dress while you stood in a parking lot and told me to be grateful. He didn't speak. His mouth opened, then closed. I saw something shift behind his eyes. Not quite shame, not quite recognition, but the shadow of both. Half a second where he was just a 60-year-old man in a suit that wasn't his, realizing his daughter had outgrown the smallest version of her he'd been carrying around in his head. Then he looked away. He straightened his tie. He didn't say he was sorry. I didn't expect him to. Some doors stay locked no matter who's holding the key. Beatrice stepped back to the arch. "Shall we continue?" she said, like the last 10 minutes had been a weather delay. Ethan took my hand again. His eyes were red, but his grip was steady. The vows were short. We'd written them together on a weeknight, sitting on the kitchen floor with the cat between us, and they were plain and honest and didn't try to be poetry. He said he loved me for the way I fixed problems before most people even noticed them. I said I loved him for letting me be the one who fixed them, without ever making me feel like I had to. Beatrice pronounced us married at 4:32. The barn erupted, not the polished applause of a country club, but the raw, relieved, joyful noise of 180 people who'd been sitting inside a story they didn't fully understand until 10 minutes ago and were now watching it end the right way. Ethan kissed me. I kissed him back. Somebody whistled. The quartet started up again. I picked the peonies up off the table, next to the cancellation printout nobody had bothered to examine because the truth was already out loud, and held them against my chest as we walked back down the aisle between the folding chairs and the fairy lights and people who were on their feet now, reaching out to touch our arms, our shoulders, the edge of my dress. Rachel Owens was near the back with her camera operator. She wasn't filming the ceremony. She was filming the crowd, the faces, the tears, the hands. Marilyn and Gerald were gone. They'd slipped out during the vows. Chelsea was still there, alone in the back row, staring at her phone with the blank look of someone whose broadcast had turned into somebody else's headline. We stepped outside into the last hour of daylight. The ridge above Miller's Ridge was gold, and I was married. Rachel's segment aired the following Tuesday on the evening broadcast. She called it 90 Minutes, and she framed it as the story of a bride who rescued her own wedding. The piece ran a little over 4 minutes, long for a local lifestyle spot. It opened with footage of the barn lit up at dusk, then cut to 3 guests describing the last-minute text and the drive to a venue they'd never heard of. Rachel didn't editorialize. She didn't have to. The facts carried it. A wedding venue canceled without the bride's knowledge. A refund processed to somebody else's card. And a woman who relocated 180 people in under 90 minutes using a professional network the groom's family had no idea she had. The segment never named Marilyn directly. It didn't need to. Within 2 days, every member of the Brookdale Country Club who'd been at the wedding had shared the clip. Marilyn resigned from the gala committee that Friday. Gerald stopped hearing back from 3 of his golf partners. Chelsea deleted a post she'd drafted about family resilience after the comments filled up with people who'd seen the broadcast. The money was simpler. An attorney Ethan and I met with the following week reviewed the cancellation record, the deposit receipts, and the refund trail. She said Marilyn's cancellation of a contract funded partly with our money, without our knowledge or consent, might have amounted to unauthorized conversion under state law. She said we could probably recover the $8,000 through a civil claim. We kept the receipts. We didn't file. The point had already been made, in a room full of witnesses and a 4-minute news segment seen by tens of thousands of people across the valley. Ethan called his parents the Wednesday after the broadcast. It was a short conversation. He told them he loved them, that the door was open if they ever wanted an honest relationship with us, and that the money question would stay on the table until they were ready to talk about it. Marilyn hung up. Gerald texted 2 hours later, "Your mother needs time. She took it. As of now, we haven't spoken in 5 months. I don't know if that's a boundary or a loss. Most days I think it's both." The binder sits on a shelf in my home office now, between a framed photo of my mother's peony garden and the Cedar Hollow invoice stamped paid. I still carry a version of it to every event. I probably always will.